Do you want to avoid an unnecessary C-section? Then you're going to want to watch this video and the rest of this series because I'm going to go deep into everything that you need to know to avoid the cesarean traps. Hi, my name is Carly Bonderud, and this is the Empowered Birth series where I go deep into everything that you need to know to plan and get your empowered, true, natural birth. And next week, we are starting the next season of our Empowered Birth series, the Cesarean Traps. If you've been following along with me for a while, then you've probably already found my series of the 26 things that you need to know if this is your first time planning a true natural birth. And you've likely also checked out the Natural Birth Traps series. If you haven't, you're probably going to want to check that out before we dive into the cesarean traps, because everything that I teach inside of Empowering Moms builds on itself. I have something called the Empowered Birth Method, and it allows you to get the birth you want without having to fight, beg, or compromise. It also helps you avoid the cesarean trap, which is the insidious traps that moms tend to fall into that leads to them getting unnecessary C-sections. And then years later, when they're trying to have a VBAC, they either get sabotaged out of it or they feel that it's too hard to get. And you don't deserve to be robbed of your birth experience. And the primary cesarean is the one you really want to avoid because after you have a C-section, suddenly your options for birth change. Suddenly, you are no longer just having an unproven pelvis. Suddenly, you're now traumatized. You may want to check out my start guide on my website. Go to empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide. Look at the mistakes that VBAC moms make. Look at the mistakes that first-time moms make. And look at the mistakes that seasoned moms make, because this all ties in. So what is a cesarean trap? Well, that is the topic of this particular masterclass, because I want you to get the introductory information that's going to help you as we go through the Cesarean Trap series. First of all, the Cesarean Trap is a term that I have basically coined that builds off of my original term, natural birth traps. I talked about this inside of my book, Your Empowered Birth, way back in 2022 when I wrote it. Basically, it means this. You are thinking that you're doing everything right to avoid a C-section. And then what happens is that you end up falling into one or several traps that then undermine your confidence, sabotage your natural birth, and also lead to unnecessary medical interventions that then become the cascade of interventions that lead to a C-section. And even the most educated mom can fall into this trap. In fact, I almost fell into this trap. So the purpose of the Empowered Birth series is really to give you that education combined with stories of moms who either fell into those traps and then later learned or were able to avoid them altogether. And through the Empowered Birth method, I also have 5 pillars. So again, if you go and check out my book, Your Empowered Birth, then you're going to be able to learn more about those 5 pillars. But through each episode of the Empowered Birth series, I go into those 5 pillars and how to apply them to avoid certain traps. So the thing you really need to understand about how I came to this is that way back when I was a first-time mom, I thought I was doing everything right. I had recognized that I did not want to be in the hospital. I had recognized that I wanted to avoid all the medical intervention, and I had seen a baby story enough times to notice that the moms that wanted to have a natural birth suddenly went into the hospital, and the episode might as well have been called, How Am I Going to Get My C-Section Today? Because pretty much every single mom ended up getting an epidural, or they were induced, or they had Pitocin, or they had trauma in their births, or most likely they ended up with a C-section. And I started to question this. I also had seen the business of being born, so I understood about profit, convenience, and liability in the US. But I didn't think that it was going to be the same way in Canada. After all, our healthcare is basically free. Why would it be? Well, that is the key here, because there's still a payment structure that is happening. And once I recognized that it really wasn't that great over here, that is when I got the fire lit under me. So basically, what happened is for up until 35 weeks, I was really thinking, I'm not going to go into the hospital and I'm not going to have a doctor. So I'm not going to have a C section and I don't even have to worry about any of these medical interventions. I am protected. But that is the problem with the natural birth traps is that you don't recognize that you're falling into one because these are the things that are in mainstream. These are the things that you've basically been taught are normal. And I was slowly being led into a direction I didn't want to go. You may want to check out some of my other videos, particularly the one on growth scans, because this is where I almost got tricked into having a C-section. Because at 35 weeks, I was suddenly told, your baby isn't growing properly. We may need to induce you, and you may likely have a C-section. This completely devastated me because I didn't want a C-section. I'm terrified of needles. I've never had surgery in my life. I don't want surgery, and I'd like to avoid the hospital as much as possible. So, finding out that I might actually have to have major abdominal surgery to welcome my baby into the world really didn't sit right with me. And while it was suggested that I read up on C-sections so that I would feel better about it if it happened to me, I really didn't like it. The more I read about it, the more I was bursting into tears. I just didn't want it. It wasn't my path. And there were moms around me that had had C-sections, and they're like, a C-section isn't that big of a deal. I'm scheduling another one. After all, I don't want the same thing to happen in my labor that happened last time. So, once you have one C-section, you realize it's not really a big deal, and you'll have another one. And I'm like, no, I don't want to have major abdominal surgery. Why is nobody understanding this? And my family was all a healthy baby is all that matters. And it's not really about you anymore. You need to do what's best for your baby. How many times do we hear that? And then I also heard C-section save lives. That's another one that we hear quite often. But what's not being told is how many unnecessary cesareans happen each year. How many unnecessary cesareans happen in hospitals every single day, and how there are many hospitals that all they do is C-sections over and over and over again. And moms don't know what they don't know. So there's lots of women who have come to me and they've decided that they want to have a vaginal birth after one or more cesareans, and their medical system has basically told them that they're not allowed or that it's going to be too dangerous. And they're determined because they don't want to have to recover from major abdominal surgery. So after I had my baby completely natural, and again, you can read my story inside of Your Empowered Birth. I do talk about that a lot. I also talked about it a lot within the natural birth traps. I realized just how close I'd come to almost having a C-section, and I was really upset about it because it didn't have to happen. I didn't have to feel like I needed to push faster than my body wanted me to just to avoid being cut open. And the fact is that a lot of women that I was in connection with at the time, they were not so lucky. So at the end of my about 6 weeks, I had been invited to join a birth trauma group that was run by my midwife. And I didn't think I belonged there. I mean, all that happened to me was I got screwed over out of my home birth and I narrowly avoided an episiotomy. I mean, how traumatic can that really be compared to what other moms are dealing with? Other moms get C-sections. I didn't think I belonged. But my midwife told me, if you think that it was traumatic, then it was traumatic. She knew what was really going on. And she wanted me to dig that up. Because if I didn't dig it up, I wouldn't be able to heal from it. I would internalize it, and then I would be perpetuating that trauma. I would also not be able to stand in my power as a mom who knew what she was doing. And I probably would have been scared away from ever trying to have another baby again. I'd also completely distrust the medical system. And that meant that if I did need to use the medical system for anything, I would be less likely to go and get it. There are a lot of moms who are free birthing today, not because they want to, not because they fully informed themselves and they feel good about the choice, but because they have no other option, because VBAC is banned for them, because they're told that if they go into labor past a certain point, that there's going to be a catastrophic outcome. And they know that's not true, but they're being heavily pressured into induction. There are moms that are told, you're not even allowed to go into labor. You're going to have a C-section. And they just don't want to have that pressure. There's a lot of category 5s in the medical system that basically sees C-sections as a lucrative means to continue to get their bottom line filled. And they will just push every mom into a C-section, no matter what they have to say or do to do it. So when you recognize just how dangerous it is for moms who want to basically have autonomy in their births, you also recognize why these natural birth traps are such a problem and why the cesarean traps are just another insidious layer of that. So the deeper I went into wanting to plan my birth my way, because I'm like, I'm never going to have another hospital birth and I want another baby. I need my do-over. If I don't have my do-over, I will never get to experience that home birth that I deserve to have the first time. I was so determined that I started to read up everything I could on natural birth to see if I'd missed something. I read up on growth restrictions and I found out that I didn't have a growth restriction, that you can't actually diagnose that from an ultrasound. And then I got even more mad. I also discovered Improving Birth with Dawn Thompson, and I learned about evidence-based birth with Rebecca Decker. I found out about my rights with Birth Monopoly Kristen Pascucci, and I was also looking at VBAC. Not because I needed to have one, but because my friend Christine had been absolutely traumatized. Christine had been with me from the beginning of when I had started going for the weekly drop-ins at the midwife practice and taking the free prenatal classes. She was a little bit ahead of me, due in April, whereas I was due in May. And she was further along. She wanted to have a natural birth. She also was doing all of the things. She was taking the birth classes. She was reading the birth books, and she was preparing her body for a natural birth. And unfortunately, Christine ended up going to 42 weeks. The midwife said, I can't take you past 42 weeks. You'd have to transfer to an OB. Christine didn't want that. This is a huge problem where moms get risked out of midwife care, and it's not right. And this is part of why the empowered birth movement exists, because I want to shift the tide. So Christine then ended up getting an induction. Her baby wasn't ready. Her body wasn't ready. And she ended up with a very, very traumatic C-section that caused her to say, I'm never having another baby. I can't risk it. I don't want to go in and have another planned C-section. And I also don't want an emergency C-section. And so she went and had her partner schedule a vasectomy. But, they kind of waited too long. And about the same time that I got pregnant with my daughter, Christine got pregnant with her daughter. And she suddenly realized, I want to have a VBAC. There's no way in hell I'm going to plan another C-section. And this started Christine's education. At the same time, because we had discovered Improving Birth and we were so upset with what had happened within our community, we decided to do something about it. We decided to become rally coordinators. And so we started speaking out. And this got us noticed by the birth community. Doulas started to reach out to us. Little moms who were just starting a little mom page were suddenly getting attention. And they wanted to know what we were having as an experience. So we went to these think tanks and we went to these meetings. And this is when I was in connection with other birth workers and finding out that they had known this stuff for years. Some of them had been working on it for decades. There were women that were in their 70s that had been combating this, that had been speaking out, that had been trying to get the birth culture to stop giving in to the medical system and falling into these cesarean traps. Because I was also now an advocate, I was also digging into the statistics of the local hospitals. And I found cesarean rates as high as 40 and 50%. I was absolutely floored by this because the World Health Organization itself has said that 10 to 15% of births, that is the optimal rate for intervention. That's not even C-section, that's just intervention. And yet, Most moms were getting induced, or they were having their labor sped up with drugs, or having their waters broken, or they were otherwise being rushed through their process. And then they were getting C-sections at alarming rates. I found out that my local community was actually driving up the C-section rate for our entire country. And I'm sitting there, it's like, we're at 1 in 3, just like the US, and our country is at 1 in 4. What the heck is going on? Is it really what they're saying in the media, which is that moms are older now and they're waiting longer, so they're less healthy, and the babies are more likely to get stuck because they're bigger? No, no. The more I dug into the stats, the more I recognized that actually our population was still quite young. There weren't a lot of teenagers giving birth. There weren't a lot of moms in their 40s giving birth. And there wasn't a high rate of complications in pregnancy. The complications happened afterwards. The highest rates of C-section were happening for babies getting stuck in the pelvis and for basically the non-reassuring fetal heart rates. And when I looked at that, I also looked at the rate of induction and I looked at the rate of Pitocin use. And then I compared it to births being performed with midwives versus births with doctors. And I again saw what was going on. I'm like, we have a very small midwife population, but it's still the biggest midwife population that we have in all of our country. So we had about 20% midwives here in BC. Same thing is over in Ontario, which is the other big province. So I'm like, okay, we have the highest rate of midwives. We have the midwife schools. And we have a very educated, very affluent population here in the Lower Mainland. And yet we are still getting these C-section rates. And then people are always like, oh, well, maybe it's because moms are opting into these C-sections. No. Again, it was about 5% of the population actually opted in. And honestly, before I had my first baby, I had been scared. And I had said in a college anthropology class way back in my early 20s, just knock me out and give me a C-section and a tummy tuck. I don't want to go through labor. I don't want to go through that trauma, because that is all I saw. I saw moms on their back being told to push. I saw moms that were being told, you're going to tear, so I'm going to cut you. I saw moms basically saying, I ripped from end to end. I saw moms that basically also said how excruciatingly painful labor was. This was what I grew up with. This is what my education was. Everybody would say how painful, how traumatic labor was. It was reinforced in the media. I would see it on TV. I still see it today, except now I know better and I call it out when I see it. But every time you see those comments from moms and women who haven't even given birth yet, and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm never, ever going to get pregnant. I'm not going to ever have an unmedicated birth. This is absolutely horrific. Even the births where they say it was unmedicated and it was positive, I call it positive birth trauma, because often these moms are still on their backs and they are going through and they're like, this is the most painful part. It was pushing the baby out. I'm like, no, 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 no. That's not even how birth is supposed to be. But because of the way that our society and our birth culture and our medical system has basically appropriated the natural birth term, we have a big dichotomy between the moms who are free birthing and the moms who are basically going with the medical model, and they don't talk to each other. Oftentimes, one side is like, you're reckless and dangerous. And the other one is like, are you kidding me? I actually know what I'm doing here. And, it's not that. You need to be able to come to your birth from a place of power, not a place of fear. The more we fear birth, the more we fall into those cesarean traps. So what you really need to understand about these cesarean traps and what you're going to get within this Empowered Birth series is that I'm going to highlight the 21 things that you need to know and what you want to avoid when it comes to those cesarean traps. Because as I said, most moms, when they're going for that birth education, the mainstream education, they think that they're doing everything right. And I can usually see where they're about to fall into a trap. Sometimes it's that they're told that their baby is big and they should probably just schedule an induction to avoid a C-section. Big trap, huge trap. Don't do it. And sometimes they're even told to just schedule a C-section just because their baby is big and induction wouldn't even work for them. Some moms are told, well, you know what, your baby is breech and we don't deliver breech, so therefore you have to have a C-section. Again, this is not true. If we started demanding breech birth again, we would have breech birth again. But because of the fact that everybody has become afraid and this propaganda has been pushed so often, and all of this misinformation is out there, moms then just think, I have no options, so I guess I'm just going to have to try to get my baby to turn, try to get myself into labor now that my baby has flipped, and they rush their process because they want to avoid that C-section. The same for twins, the same for VBAC moms. You know, there's so many traps that you can fall into. And as I said, I've listed 21 of them. Next week, I'm going to actually go into the full deep dive list. But if you want an overview, you can always go onto my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com/freebies. That is where I have my list of the different traps and mistakes that you are making when it comes to planning your natural birth. Information is free. I only charge for access to me. Now, the other thing you're going to want to know about these deep dive masterclasses is that I basically want you to treat this as if you were paying for it, as if you had plunked down $97 to basically sit there and learn from me in a class. Take notes, watch the video 3 times if you're just on the do-it-yourself path and you're not going any deeper. Because the first time you get the overview, the second time you get the aha moments, and the third time you watch it, you get that integration and you can apply the empowered birth method. So finally, what you're going to need to understand is that the empowered birth method has several different components to it. The first one is that you need to understand and optimize the 5 pillars of empowered birth. So you need the right mindset, the right education, the right environment, the right facilitators, and the right support. After that, there's a deeper component because each of those pillars, it's basically like a book. So you're looking at the first side is the basic bookends of the system are the mindset and the support. So it basically reinforces what's in the middle. And if you don't have what's in the middle, then you can't reinforce the outsides. So it is a continuous spiral that allows you to transcend your fears and allows you to get the birth you want without having to fight, beg, or compromise. If you would like the full overview or deep dive, then I'm going to suggest that you either check out my book, Your Empowered Birth, particularly chapter 5, where I talk about the 5 pillars. And you can also go to my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide, because I give you a deeper dive overview of the empowered birth method. Now, if you want to apply the empowered birth method, this is where you have 3 paths, okay? So the component of mindset is really, you need to get past your fear. And then you also need to see yourself as the birth visionary and the birth consumer. And then in addition to that, you then become the birth advocate. But if you don't have those pieces optimized and figured out, and you don't go in the particular order of the empowered birth method, things start to fall apart. This is why a lot of moms, when they're trying to plan to avoid a cesarean, they fall into what I call information overwhelm. You go out there and you're like, spam me with all of the links to all of the natural birth stuff so I can avoid a C-section. Or spam me with all of the links so that I can avoid another C-section because I'm going for a VBAC. Unfortunately, the medical system and our natural birth community also tends to have these dichotomies. And within those dichotomies, there's a lot of fear and misinformation. And then you don't know who to trust because if fish can't see the water that they swim in, and that water happens to be toxic sludge, then what happens is you think that there is nothing else. You don't really have all of the context. Here at Empowering Moms, I'm all about giving you the context so that instead of deferring to the experts, you're not just going and learning what to think. You're learning how to think about it. Okay? So part of this now is that you need to have that right mindset that you are your own best expert and you need the tools to be able to get past your fear. And I scatter those throughout all of my master classes. I also teach this inside of Your Empowered Birth, that little blue book behind me. And I also have this inside of the Reset Your Mindset for Empowered Birth mini challenge. You just go into my YouTube channel and inside of the playlist, you'll find that set of master classes. Next, after that, you need to basically have your partner on board. That is your right support. Your partner is the one who is going to be reinforcing on the outside. Your partner is the one who actually needs to advocate for you. Because when you are having a natural birth, you are in your basic mammalian brain. You are not supposed to be in your thinking brain, your neocortex. You need to be in your primal state. You need to go into what a lot of my clients and women who've worked with me have called the psychedelic labor land. This is when you go into your labor trance and you don't feel a lot of pain. You can check out some of my other videos where I talk about psychedelic labor land. But what you really need to understand is that you need to be able to tune into your intuition. And you can't tune into your intuition if you are afraid. If nobody is reinforcing the outside to protect you and they are also afraid, then that affects your mindset. So the more you understand that you and your partner are a team and you need to be coming at this as a team. And this is what I do in my high level premium coaching is that I get the partner on board because the partner is the wild card. They are the one that is closest to you. They are the ones that are the most influential when it comes to you deciding whether to go against what you're being told or to follow it. In fact, my former partner had been the one that influenced me to go to the hospital when I really didn't feel any need to. And once he had said he wasn't comfortable having the baby at home anymore, that's when I crumbled. You can't have your partner crumble. Now, as I said, there's the three juicy pieces in the middle, which is the right education, the right environment, and the right facilitators. And in order for you to have those pieces, you really need to have your mindset so strong that you know where you're going on the map. Otherwise, you pretty much are just grabbing whatever information and you're going to get into information overwhelm because not all of that information is going to help you. In fact, there's a lot of VBAC information out there and information on natural birth that I'm like, no, 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 you don't want to do that. So when you are looking at the information, you need to look at it through the lens of physiological birth, the true natural birth. Because if you're looking at it outside of that lens, then you're just reinforcing the same thing that's going to lead you into the cesarean traps. You also need to understand that you have to have the right environment to feel safe, both to ask questions and also to birth. And finally, you need to have the right facilitators, doulas who actually can see things and to advocate for you strongly. And you need to hire a care provider who can sit on their hands, trust birth, and not push a C-section. Because there's a lot of doctors out there that will basically say, oh, yeah, we support natural birth. And then behind the scenes, they're doing things to sabotage that from actually happening. And it's more like the Cinderella natural birth. You can do this as long as you meet all of these requirements. And that's not okay. It's not okay for them to restrict your ability to have a natural birth. And it's not okay to restrict your VBAC. So basically what I'm doing with these master classes is that way back in 2022 and 2023, I started to teach them inside of a Facebook group. And then I built a YouTube channel because I knew that I was going to be scaling upwards and I was going to take fewer clients on. And I wanted to make sure that nobody got left behind. This is when a mom, Dee Dee, you can learn about her story if you check out some of my videos in the Natural Birth Trap series. I do talk about her quite a bit. She was one of the moms that came to me after I'd already written Your Empowered Birth. So her story isn't in the current edition of Your Empowered Birth, which is the first one. She will probably be in there in later editions. But Dee Dee had basically decided she did not want another C-section. She'd already had 3. She had been basically robbed of her birth 3 times, and she did not want that C-section recovery. She did not want to undergo major abdominal surgery. And the hospital and her doctors were all saying she was not allowed. Dee Dee does not like to be told what to do. So Dee Dee thankfully was able to find my videos. I don't remember how exactly she found them, but she did end up finding my channel, and then she binge watched the original Cesarean Trap series. This was a lot shorter. I basically talked for about 30 minutes, and I had about 5 different things that I was covering out of those Cesarean Traps. So it was about a 5-series video segment that I was basically doing, 1 per week. And then I put them onto YouTube, and she binge watched the crap out of them. And then she decided that she wanted to go and take advantage of my Write Your Empowered Birth Plan mini challenge that I also have as a bonus with Your Empowered Birth. And then after that, she also decided to book a call with me because she really wanted to talk to me. And I'm like, okay, Dee Dee, but first, here is the PDF version of Your Empowered Birth. Go through that so that you have the baseline information. And when we get on that call in 2 weeks, then we know where we're at. So Dee Dee did that. She went and she read Your Empowered Birth, and she went and did the birth plan challenge. And she was just learning everything she could. So when she got onto that call, she and her partner basically were like, you know what? We are not having another C-section if we can help it. Sure, we'll do it if there's an emergency that comes up, but they're not even letting us try. And we're sick of it. We want help. So they hired me as their coach and virtual doula, and I worked with them for 6 weeks. And afterwards, basically, Dee Dee and her partner, they achieved their goal of having a VBAC after 3 cesareans in the hospital because they decided, well, because Dee Dee decided that she wanted to get some pain relief. So she did end up choosing the epidural, and she managed to be able to stand in her power and say no to another repeat C-section, despite the fact the medical system was so convinced that 1 contraction was going to lead to a uterine rupture. So they made medical history, and they ended up getting into the medical journals because of the fact that they did something that was unheard of. And really what they did was just what physiologically is going to happen if you never schedule surgery. You're either going to birth your baby, or intuitively, you're going to call in that medical intervention. So the aim of the empowered birth method is we aim for a true natural birth, and we only pull back as much as we feel we need to, which means you need to be strong in your power. You need to come to your birth from a place of power instead of a place of fear. And that is basically what Dee Dee did. Dee Dee has told me over and over, if I'd never found your videos, I would have ended up with a C-section. If I'd never worked with you, I would have ended up in a C-section. Thank you for saving me. I'm like, okay, well, yes, you found my videos, and yes, you got the information. However, I did not save you. You saved yourself because you decided that you were going to binge watch those videos. You decided that you were going to get onto my newsletter. You decided that you wanted my courses. You decided to work with me. That is why you were able to do it. It was not me. It was you. You, with your determination, Dee Dee, are the one that did it. So every single mom that comes to me and asks for information is free. I only charge for access to me. And I'm very careful about who I take on as a client because I'm very protective of my energy. I also have my coaching queens, and they take on clients as well. However, I also want them to fill their cup first. So my coaching queens are well paid for their time, which is why premium coaching is not accessible to everyone. We do have a high price tag for working with us, and we do hold our clients to very high standards. We also have self-study for those who need to show that they can do the work, or who want to do the work themselves. We have self-study VIP for those who want a little bit of hand-holding, but are otherwise not able to work with us at the deeper levels, either because we don't have a time slot available for them to work with us, or because they just can't afford it. And finally, the do-it-yourself path, which is what you're on now. The deep dive masterclasses, as I said, I want you to treat these as if you had paid money for them, as if you had plunked down at least $97 at least to sit down on these classes and take those notes and get that information. Because the deeper you go with empowering moms, the more treasures you uncover. And the more that you value the information, the more it's going to work for you. So these are not fluff videos, okay? I want to be very clear about that. If you're looking for fluff videos, then you can probably check out some of the little clips that come out every once in a while. I do put things out on YouTube and Instagram, and I do put out little reels, but the deep dive masterclasses themselves, expect to be sitting here for at least 30 minutes to an hour, sometimes a little bit longer. Sometimes these videos can go almost to 2 hours, and they are full of valuable information. It's full of birth advocacy secrets. It's full of empowered mom secrets. It's full of case stories and showing you what is actually possible. Because the thing about empowering moms is that when you have an empowered birth, you're an empowered mom for life, and no one can take your power away from you again. And the reason I want to put that information out there for free is specifically because when it's behind a paywall, moms don't know about it. And when it's not in mainstream, moms don't know about it. They are stuck in their fear. They follow the wrong people. And then they get the same information that leads to those cesarean traps. So basically what you have uncovered here is that I'm going to give you the map to your own empowered birth, whether you ever can work with me or not, whether you get any of my courses, and whether you even get my book, Your Empowered Birth. Although you may want to check that out. It's inside of the YouTube playlist, and you can just check that out as it is, or you can go and get a copy on Amazon. So the thing is that I'm basically creating an empowered birth movement, and it takes all of us. So if you're a birth worker and you're watching this, then I'm going to invite you to collaborate with me and help me get this message out there. And I would love to also amplify your voice. If you're a mom who is passionate about birth and you are wanting to become a birth advocate, there is a path for that within the Coaching Queens and within my Empowered Mom Ambassadors. You can always learn more about that if you go to my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide, and check the philosophy and mission statement. And if you're just trying to avoid a C-section or a repeat C-section, then again, this information is going to help you to do that. And the deeper you go, the more you're going to uncover. If you ever have any questions, all you have to do is reach out to the team, hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com. We'll get back to you within 3 to 5 business days. If you are a subscriber, then your path is a little different. All you have to do is hit reply to any one of our weekly newsletters. And then what happens is that we'll get back to you within 1 to 2 business days. And if you happen to be a self-study VIP, or you are in our premium coaching, your path is again a little bit more access to us, and you can basically do a back and forth. We'll also check in on you. So every once in a while, we will send out an email to you to be like, hey, where are you at in the process? If you are in premium coaching, you have access either to me directly through WhatsApp or within our group chat feature, you have access. So recognizing that there are different layers of empowering moms and different levels of access, and at the same time, you're going to get the same quality information. You're going to get the same quality education, and you're going to get support at the level that you truly need it. So again, information is free, and I only charge for access to me. So finally, before we go, I just want to let you know about additional resources that you are going to want to get. The first one, of course, is to go and check out the Reset Your Mindset for Empowered Birth mini challenge. That's the first step. Because if you are still stuck in fear, you have something called cognitive dissonance, and it's getting in the way of you getting right information. And if you're not getting the right education because it's being blocked by your fears, then you're going to stay in that information overwhelm and that information loop that keeps you stuck and deferring to the experts. The next thing you're going to want to do is check out Your Empowered Birth. As I said, this book is also available inside of the YouTube playlist. You don't have to buy it first. And if you do love it and you want a copy of your own, it is available on Amazon Kindle, and it's also available in paperback. Proceeds from Your Empowered Birth also are going back into the Empowered Birth movement and to put a little bit of food on the table for my kids. But really, I don't want to have a huge ad budget. I don't want to have to splash myself all over social media and have my team basically only working on spamming people, because that is not the way that Empowering Moms works. That's not how I want my coaching queens to be doing things. And so basically, what I want to do is put the money back into resources for moms. One of them is birth houses. You see, moms risk out of birth centers. They risk out of the ability to have their birth the way they want when they're in a hospital system. There's a lot of VBAC bans in hospitals, or unofficial VBAC bans, where they just heavily control VBAC, and then you end up with a C-section anyway because they've undermined your confidence and sabotaged your natural birth process. But if you have a birth house, then what this does is it allows you to have like an Airbnb style that's close to a hospital. So if you do need to travel, you're not traveling very far. And then in addition to that, you have extra amenities available that you might not have at a typical home birth. So your midwife doesn't have to carry as much. So recognizing that these birth houses would really change the game. But in order for that to happen, you need to be able to fund those birth houses. And in order for that to happen, we need to be able to have more moms making the money that they deserve to make, because moms have been getting the short end of the stick for way too long. And I am done with it. Here at Empowering Moms, I have a simple philosophy that whether you're birthing a baby, birthing a business or creative project, or birthing a movement, Empowering Moms is here for you. And the structure of Empowering Moms and the Empowered Birth Method is really to help you take your power back in all areas of your life. When you have an empowered birth, you're an empowered mom for life. No one can take your power away from you again. So the final piece of the empowered birth system that's still for free is to go and get your Empowered Birth Workshop. This is our signature introductory program. This is what all of my empowered moms started with way back in 2021, when Jenny said to me, I want to learn everything I can from you. How do I take your classes? This is what I want to learn. Tell me the secrets. And I ran that workshop, and we ended up attracting some other moms who wanted to learn from us at a deeper level. Then we created our first coaching container, where I had these moms inside of a small intimate group program, and I was coaching them towards getting their VBACs. Rebecca is one of those moms. And Jenny, because she was working with me at a deeper level as my co-founder of Your Empowered Birth Academy, when it was still just live classes, she got the deeper dive into it. And she managed to have an unassisted vaginal birth after cesarean in the hospital. Go check out my start guide in the success stories to learn more about Jenny's story and Rebecca's story if you aren't already familiar, or if you just want a refresher and to hear what these moms had to say. So finally, once you're going through that Empowered Birth Workshop, there is a deeper level program, and that is your Empowered Birth Academy. If you've already signed up for the newsletter, then you're probably already familiar with this, because it was the offer that was given to you at the end after telling you how to get the most out of your toolkit. But the fact is that you can get into Academy at any time that you really want to. It is a completely self-study program, and there's an extra component to it that is why it is self-study VIP. And the reason for that is because Academy is very dense. It is a very advanced program. This is the program for the moms who are like, I am not going to let the medical system tell me what I'm allowed to do. There are restrictions on VBAC in my area. I may not be able to get a midwife. I may not be able to get a doula. And I need the help right now. I need to figure out how to do this myself. How do I train up my partner? How do I trust my body? How do I get past all of this fear? What do I really need to know to do this myself? And if I did need to advocate for myself in the medical system, how do I avoid the trauma? All of the things that I basically taught Dee Dee to do, because at one point, Dee Dee decided she needed to go into the hospital. I was a virtual doula. And Dee Dee was several miles away. Dee Dee was in another country. She was across the pond, even. So I couldn't exactly sit there with her and advocate. And her partner wasn't even able to be with her the whole time. They had other kids that they needed to take care of. So Dee Dee was going in basically advocating for herself. And this is what I teach within your Empowered Birth Academy, is how to advocate for yourself when you're going into those appointments alone, when you're going in and you don't know how the medical system is going to push back on you, how to stay in your power. But again, Academy is very dense, and Academy has a lot of components that you may miss if you have not been following the empowered birth method for very long. If you just started out with Academy and you didn't have that baseline training, then you could get very seriously lost. And that is why with Academy, I also allow for one 15-minute laser coaching call of the help I'm stuck variety. And then at the same time, we're checking in on you a lot more to make sure that you are going through and you're not stuck. And then in addition to that, when you finish the program, you get a 45-minute coaching call. And this coaching call is basically going to help you look over your homework, look at everything that you've done within Academy, all of your workbooks, everything that you've completed. And then we're going to find the path that's right for you. We're going to be like, okay, this is where you need to tweak it just a little bit. This is how we'll get you past your fear. This is how we'll get you to get your care provider to stop pushing back on you. This is how we're going to get your partner on board. This is how you can optimize the chances of having a beautiful, empowered birth, even if you need to call in this medical intervention. Because, sometimes that happens, but that doesn't mean that your birth needs to go out the window. Every birth can and should be a beautiful and empowering experience. And you are not disposable. You are not just the wrapper for the candy that is the baby. You deserve to have the most beautiful, empowered experience, even if it ends up being a C-section. So that's basically why I say information is free and I only charge for access to me. Because if you are not getting that information, you stay afraid, you fall into those cesarean traps, and then this continues to drive up our C-section rate. Moms continue to think that C-sections are always life-saving, and then the gaslighting can continue, the fear can continue, the control can continue, and this is not okay. Moms are suffering. VBAC moms are suffering, especially because they do not know how to actually get the birth that they want. And it's not okay. So I'm standing for those moms because, as I said, Dee Dee really wanted to avoid that C-section. She was doing everything she could. And when it turned out that she needed to go to the hospital, we didn't know what was going to happen. But the fact that she was dealing with a lot of stress from that medical system, she did not deserve that. And when I saw just what was going on, I'm like, I am taking an even bigger stand. The gloves are really coming off. My book needs to be published now. And so I went about it and I published my book the next month after Dee Dee had her baby. And I was just like, this needs to get out there at a louder level. I'm taking the gloves off. In 2024 is when I created your Empowered Birth Academy to be completely self-study because I knew that I was not going to be able to take on every single mom that came to me. Dee Dee found my channel and she immediately wanted to work with me. And I knew that once Empowering Moms started to explode and the viewership got up there, that moms would start needing extra things. So those resources are available for you. Even though I don't take on everyone as a premium coaching client, you are still going to get support within Empowering Moms. So please reach out. And if you found value in this video and any of the master classes, please pay it forward. Like, share, subscribe to our channel, pass this on to other moms, drop this into the mom groups, particularly for the moms who want to avoid a C-section, because I am committed to you having an empowered birth, whether you work with me or not. And a drop in the ocean creates ripples. Many ripples create waves, and enough waves can change the tide. So thank you so much for staying to the end of this video. And as I said, the deep dive master classes are going to be starting next week. And when you have an empowered birth, you're an empowered mom for life. No one can take your power away from you again. So have a happy empowered birth journey, and I will see you soon. Namaste.